What's up? I'm Ashley, and we're going to be breaking down Severance, Season 2, Episode 2. But don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And with that being said, let's get into it. After following the Ennies in the last episode, we start the episode where we left off in the Season 1 finale, with Mark's Audi waking up after the OTC ended. Everyone's looking at him like, "What's wrong with you?" After just yelling, "She's alive." Devin asks if he's okay and gives him a hug. When she asked him, "Do you know what my name is?" he says, "Persephone, who is the queen of the underworlds in Greek mythology," as a joke. We cut to Helena looking in the mirror, touching her neck. And I think this could be Helena thinking about what her Annie Helly did to herself. After Mr. Drummond walks in, Helena's father, James Egan, walks in as well. And he calls her a fetid moppet. I said, "What's that?" So I went straight to Google. Fetid meaning unpleasant smell, and moppet, little girl. So basically, he just called her a smelly child. Then he just leaves. After that, Helly tells Mr. Drummond they'll have someone from the floor check on the Audis to find out what they all know and who they've been talking to. We see Dylan G leaving work with an ice pack on his head, and I highly doubt they gave him a note to let him know what happened. But from afar, Mr. Milchek is watching him leave, like a little creep. We then cut to Helena telling Mr. Milchek they need to find out every word they said and who they said it to. Mr. Milchek wants to know should he fire them, but Helena tells him, "Let here guide your hand." We get this wide shot of Helena walking to her meeting with Miss Cobell, and I can't help but notice her walk being a little more stiff than Helly's. It could be why they threw that wide shot in there, but we learn that James Egan won't be joining the meeting. Helena thanks Miss Cobell for her gratitude and for acting so quickly, which is why we want to ask you back. Miss Cobell said, "An apology is granted." So Helena says, "I apologize, my father apologized, and the board apologizes." Where were they at then? I want to hear them say it, if I'm Miss Cobell. But Miss Cobell accepts and says they need to start by looking at the feed and they need to interview Dylan G to see how he was able to gain access. But Helena tells her they have something else in mind. They want to offer her a promotion as Severance Advisory Council, basically telling her she's going to take on this new role as a leader in this new position. But Miss Cobell says I should be running the severed floor. Helena lets her know that's Mr. Milchek's job now. Cobell tells her, "You don't value me, you fear me." Helena tells her, "We fear no one," which is a lie, because if they did it, they wouldn't be trying to cover all this up. Cobell tells her she'll think about this new job offer and tells her she don't need an escort on her way out. "I can walk out of here by myself." And Helena's subtle hand movement to Mr. Drummond is just her trying to make Miss Cobell think she's in control. Mr. Milchek has a motorcycle, and I can't say I'm too surprised, with the license plate that reads Remedium Hominibus, which is the same one Mark has, which in Latin it means cure for men. And he's on his way to fire people on his motorcycle. We then cut to Helena making her apology video, claiming she had a little too much to drink while on a non-lumen medication for an arm rash, and that caused her to say some things that she didn't mean and that she regrets, taking it all back and claiming not to have been tortured. Meanwhile, Milchek has popped up at Irv's house, starting off with small talk he knows he don't care nothing about. Then he goes into, "Is there anything you need to tell me?" Then just fires him after claiming he and his innie are friends. Then we jump to him firing Dylan G, telling him he was in an altercation with another severed employee. "It was brief but violent, and you were the aggressor. So we have no choice than terminating your employment." His tone was a lot more harsh with Dylan G, maybe because of all the history they've had together. Who knows? Now back to Mark, and a line that sticks out to me is when Rebecca tells Rickon, "Don't punish the baby. This wasn't its fault." Now, Rickon's friends are weird just like him, but why would she say that? And why does she call the baby an it? Back inside the house, Devin brings up how Mark said she's alive, but Rickon says that he just assumed he was talking about the baby. But Mark insists he was talking about the baby, but when Devin breaks everything down to him, she says it makes sense that you were talking about Gemma. Because why would you be holding this picture, yelling out, "She's alive"? And as the three of them are discussing this, Mr. Milchek pops up at the door. But before they sit down and talk, Devin is smart enough to cover up Mark and Gemma's wedding picture. She already knows it's about to be some BS. So while the four of them sit down, Mr. Milchek brings up the overtime contingency and how that can be explained in his paperwork. He goes on to tell him one of his colleagues is the reason why they were able to be woken up for 39 minutes. He tells him any Mark was here in this house. Devin says, I know, I talked to him. And of course, Mr. Milchek wants to know what he said to her. But she says, if I tell you, will you punish him? And this episode should just be called Lies, Lies, and More Lies because Mr. Milchek says there are no punishments at Lumon. She also brings up Miss Cobell's lactation fraud, or shall we say Cobelvic, according to Rickon, but Mr. Milchek says Miss Cobell is unwell. Mark wants to know why was she living next door to me. Milchek tells him she's the reason why you were so stressed out at work, but you don't have to worry about seeing her again in there or out here. And of course, you already know he has to ask, is there anything you want to tell me? Mark just tells him we're tired. We want to go to sleep. There's nothing else to say. Milchek says, okay, I'll circle back, and I hope to see you Monday. Mark says, I don't know about that, man. So Milchek continues his manipulative and gaslighting ways by saying, what your Annie did tonight was completely unauthorized. It was also brave. I'd hate to reward your courage with non existence. And I just have to point out that he said, I hope to see you Monday, meaning it's only been 2 days and not 5 months like he claimed it was, like we all already knew. I was just surprised he didn't get fired like the other two. We see Irv chilling with his dog and holding the map with Bert's name on it. Then we see Mark go over to Mrs. Selvig's house, but he gets no answer. Then we cut to Helena watching the tape of Mark and Helly while they're in the office. And as soon as she sees them kiss, you can tell just how jealous Helena is of Helly. I don't think Helena gets any action out there. And she could be jealous of Helly's personality because Helena just seems so cold and stiff. But then we cut to Mark getting a text from Devin asking him to go out to lunch. We then get a glimpse of Dylan G in the real world, and he's on his way to a job interview for the company Great Doors. And before he gets out the car, he's trying to hype himself up. Seems very less confident than the Dylan G we know. The interview seems to be going pretty decent until he mentions that he was a severed employee. Then after that, he just basically gets kicked out. The guy interviewing him, which seems to look pretty similar to him, told him they want a certain type of person working there, not a certain kind of two people. While back in the car, Dylan G gets a call from his wife, Gretchen, who I wasn't too sure really existed. But he insisted on going to get more wipes for the baby that she said they didn't need. We get to Mark and Devin at the diner, and she's thinking maybe there's a way they could confirm what his innie meant. But Mark is just thinking that's ridiculous and says he's going to quit. But when Devin seems like maybe that's not a good idea, he's like, what's wrong with you? You've been wanting me to quit, and now when I say I'm about to quit, you don't want me to? And she's like, yeah, but don't you think that was strange last night? And why was he so curious? He reminds her he identified her body, but Devin says she feels like they just need a half step more confirmation so that it won't continue to haunt us. Mark said, haunt you? She was my wife. Were you the one who had to tell her parents and students she was dead? Did your sheets smell like her? Then we get more clarity on how Gemma died. We found out that she was burned. He said, if Rickon died and his body burned, I'd be sad for you. I wouldn't be affected, then gets up and leaves, when all Devin was trying to do was make sure. But during this whole conversation, Mr. Drummond was over there eavesdropping. And I have to point out his tattoo on his hand that says Frolic, which we know is one of the four tempers of Kier Egan. Frolic means playful and cheerful, which is odd for him to have that on his hand because he seems opposite of that. We see Irv stop at a payphone, and as he's doing so, we can hear a car pull up. But during the conversation on the phone, Irv is saying, you're not picking up. I get it. I want you to know my innie got the message. Then hangs up. Now, just who was he talking to? And as he's walking out, we see that it was Bert who was following him in that car. Now, what's going on with that? Mark has been too depressed to change the light bulb since Gemma died, and as he's finally getting around to it, there goes Mr. Milchek at the door with a pineapple basket. After Mark lets him in, Milchek offers him a 20% raise, and he wants to know if Mark would want a full investigation into his innings claims, and regular wellness checks from the independent orgs would help him feel more excited to come back to work. Then Milchek brings up how Gemma was the reason why Mark decided to get severed, and reminds him that he said since she died, every day feels like a year, that you felt like you were choking on her ghost. He tells him the Mark he knows at Lumon is happy, caring, and funny. He's found love, and the solace he feels down there, he'll eventually feel up here too. Nothing but gaslighting and manipulation. After this, we see Mark back in Lumon's parking lot, going inside work, with Helena and Milchek spying on him. Helena turns and asks Mr. Drummond, "Are you happy with this?" He says his sister seems more uppity than he is. Natalie asks, "Who are you bringing in MDR?" Milchek tells her he's got a floater from overseas and a pair who were laid off from 5X. We know that now to be Mark W., Gwendolyn, and Dario. Milchek says he only had 48 hours to pull this off. Hopefully they have some chemistry. But Helena says, "We don't need chemistry. We need Mark S. back to work long enough to complete Cold Harbor." So that's why they didn't fire him. He's always been a part of some plan. We then cut to Mark going to and leaving work for about 3 times or so. And remember, this is what we didn't see in the first episode. We then cut to Mark on the speaker trying to contact the board, telling them that he wants his friends back. After Helena, Milchek, and Mr. Drummond listen to the tape, Milchek apologizes, but Mr. Drummond says we're going to give him what he wants, including Helly R. He won't finish without them. Then that's when Milchek is back at Dylan and Irv's door with a pineapple basket asking them to come back to work, which reminds me a lot of this pineapple bobbing. Then we cut to Mark sadly walking back into work as he's seeing Mark W. get fired of just 3 days of work, so Mark W. threatens to sue them. We see Mark S. entering the elevator the first day his whole team is back. Then we see Dylan entering the elevator along with Irv, and then there goes Helena, who I still believe is Helena and not Helly. That night when Mark gets home, he finally catches Mrs. Selvig in the driveway clearing out all her things. And he wants all the smoke. He's like, "Where you going? I trusted you. I let you in my house. I ate your shitty cookies." She says, "They convinced you to stay? Was a pineapple involved? You're so easy to sway." And as she gets in the car and tries to drive off, Mark jumps in front of the car and stops her. He's like, "What's going on? Why would you do this? Do you know something about Gemma?" And she just stares him down. They staring back at each other. It looks like she wants to tell him something, but instead she just starts honking the horn and almost hits him as she takes off. But y'all let me know what you think about this episode down in the comments so we can talk about it. And if you haven't already and want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one.